Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Prairie Pinfall podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, with my fellow cross-promotion Canadian, Chris. And, well, this week, we're going to talk everything John Cena and Saturday Night Main Event. What did you think about this last week, Chris?
It was a great week of wrestling again. Obviously, Saturday night's main event was, I thought, a great show. And, there's going to be a lot more to talk about it. I know there's some mixed feelings on the ending of the show. And I'm going to push back on those because everybody's wrong about how they feel about it, except for us, probably. So, but we'll get to there in time, I'm sure. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is, being the AEW guy and everything. Matt, Kyle Fletcher and Speedball Mike Bailey, those guys showed out on Dynamite last week. The Continental Classic has been outstanding. It's been such a great tournament. Kyle Fletcher and Speedball had one of the best matches I've seen this year. What did you think about that match, Tyler?
Honestly, very fast-paced, very entertaining, very action-packed. And I might just dare say it was probably one of the best matches AEW has put on TV in their history.
Yeah, 100%. It was everything you expect out of an AEW match, like hard-hitting, fast-paced. There were some nasty bumps taken in that match, like Fletcher dropping Speedball on the ring barricade and stuff. Like, that was just a crazy bump, and only two pros like those guys can really pull it off. And I love to see it. I've been a fan of Speedball for a long time, and I'm glad to see he's getting these opportunities in AEW to really show out. And yeah, Canadian legend too, right? He's been a Canadian independent legend for a long time, so love to see that as well.
Absolutely. And obviously Bailey takes home the win there. And now the Continental Classic, it's kind of everyone has 6 points, right? Mike Bailey came into the week with 0, 1 to 2 back to back. Now it's even out. What are your overall takeaways from the Continental Classic so far?
It's so simple. It's just like the wrestling has been outstanding because you know what, with this tournament, I think going in, everybody kind of knows where it's ending up, right? It's Takeshita and Okada. That's what it's building towards. And so when something is, predictable like that, I think what you have to do is really show out with the actual wrestling. And, every single guy has stepped up. I don't think there's been a match that's been below 4 stars in this tournament, to use the Dave Meltzer terms, if you're interested in those. Like, honestly, every match has been outstanding. The secondary storylines they've been telling through it as well, with John Moxley and the Death Riders have really worked to their advantage as well. They're really using this tournament not only to show off their in-ring ability, but they're building stories through it. What is really interesting to me, and again, Kyle Fletcher has been the standout of the tournament so far for me, and how his story is going to really tie in with Takeshita and Okada, considering they're all part of the same faction, and he's starting to tease a little bit of dissension along with them, right? Yeah. So, like I said, it's kind of predictable the way we're going with this, but are we going to see some surprises here? Is it actually going to be maybe Kyle Fletcher that ends up taking home the tournament instead? There's a part of me that is beginning to think that they might be wanting to build up to a surprise winner just because it seems so predictable. And so I'm just very interested to where it's going to go.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned Okada, he had another very strong match against Jungle Boy Jack Perry this last week too. There's 2 really good back-to-back spots of Okada biting Jack Perry's hand to get out of a submission, and then Jack Perry seemingly biting Okada's crotch to get out of a pile driver.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's a pretty funny spot, and it just like Okada's so good at the comedy wrestling too, which is incredible because he's also like the best wrestler in the world, basically. So it's like, it really adds to these matches, I think, and it adds something a little different when he's having just an absolute banger of a match, but then he's adding that much comedy into it as well.
Then, not to mention the whole Don Callis family storyline getting added on every single match too. Like after Okada match, for example, Don Callis comes out and essentially offers Jack Perry a spot in the Don Callis family, rejects him, and then we get a Luchasaurus, Young Bucks, Jack Perry versus Don Callis family kind of spot. And just, yeah, as you said, the story building on top of the actual matches, just fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, the Continental Classic is symbolic of AEW's overall booking philosophy, where it's sometimes their philosophy is like less is more. Like, let's let the matches and the in-ring work tell the story, and the Continental Classic is the perfect example of that. And it's been great TV the last couple of weeks. So yeah, huge shout out to AEW.
And even this week they had Claudio face off against Takeshita, and just the way that the match was worked in general, like both guys left it leaving strong, even though it was a draw.
Yeah, definitely. And that's honestly the part of it being a draw as well is something I wish more wrestling companies use because it works really well in the G1 climax as well. You know, sometimes the best finish for a match is just there being a draw and it's kind of being left open for there to be another match at some point, right? I look back to, my favorite series of matches ever, Okada versus Omega. But the first two matches, the whole story is that Omega just is struggling. He cannot beat Okada. The third match goes to a draw, which is and it's like a draw that Omega was like a second away from winning the match, basically. And then finally in the fourth match, he gets his win over Okada. So it's that kind of storytelling that I just love. And I think having the draw for the tournament and stuff is just an extra piece that really adds to those matches.
Speaking of storytelling with matches, another element of AEW that we saw this week was kind of the downfall or the continued downfall of the Death Riders, right? So obviously losing against Briscoe and kind of not as dominant as they normally are in the Continental Classic. Kind of, where do you think that story's headed? I think Claudio might take over, but what are your opinions?
It's either going to be Claudio or Pac that take over. I don't know who it's going to be yet. There's definitely arguments for both. I do think Pac comes across more as the guy that, would look to try and take over, whereas Claudio is still maybe a little too loyal to Moxley. Obviously, the story is showing there's lots of dissension there. Ideally, for me, I would like to see Claudio take over because he's been a part of the Death Riders since day one. And he just fits in better with that entire story and everything. So that's what I would like to see. But, I'd be happy with Pac as well. And, they're going to write Mox off. Like, I think by the end of the tournament, Mox is going to be written out. He's going to be gone for a few months and then come back. A hero is welcome to feud with the team or feud with the Death Riders again. And that's going to be such a cool moment, right? He'll get to see babyface John Moxley again, which we haven't seen in a couple of years now.
Once again, that's just them using the wrestling to then provide the story, right? Where WWE kind of has a lot more promo segments. AEW doesn't necessarily need those. And speaking of things that are also going on in AEW, the women's tag team tournament finally got wrapped up this week too. I really like the Babes of Wrath winning because A, that wasn't expected, and B, it helps really get over that second team in the division.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, it would have been cool to see Toni Storm holding the tag titles and Mina Shirakawa, but I do kind of understand why you don't want to just be trapping Toni Storm in the tag division. Like, she is eventually going to be going back to the main event, main title scene. And, they don't want her held in the tag division long term, I'm assuming is kind of the way they're going with it. Yeah. So, yeah, I completely get that as well. And, the Babes of Wrath, they're over. They're kind of the underdog team all the way through the tournament. So, it's just a fun moment as well. So I completely get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even Toni Storm giving them the props after beating them probably does a number for them getting even more over as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But one last thing in AEW coverage wise, obviously Dynamite Battle Royale was announced. All the contestants were revealed. How do you feel about that so far?
Is MJF in it?
No, he is not.
So that's interesting because this will be the first year that he won't have the ring then, because he has won that ring every single year since its inception.
Yeah, so it's Ricochet, Anthony Bowens, Brody King, Max Caster, Shelton Benjamin, and Mark Davis.
That is picture perfect for Max Caster win. I can see the surprise Max Caster win already. It'll be great. I guarantee that's why they're going with it, and I will love it so much. Max Caster is hilarious.
Well, here at the Prairie Pinfall podcast, we do have a trend of being able to predict some of these things, just like Saturday night's main event. But before we jump there, do you have a favorite John Cena moment or rivalry entering into his last match here?
Me personally, I would say it's either his feud with Edge way back in the late 2000s or the United States Open Challenge. And I think I'm going to lean towards the US Open Challenge, like the first iteration of it. The second one was second great as well, but like the first iteration of that Open Challenge was in my opinion one of the highlights of his career. He would put so many people over. He was showing out in the ring day in and day out. His matches with Cesaro or Claudio. Matches with Sami Zayn, gets Kevin Owens over the moment Owens comes to the main roster. And, that whole era of him was probably my favorite era of John Cena. Out of the main event and still, like, showing out on the card and being the highlight of the card, I would say.
I would also say the Edge. I have two others, though. That's my top one. Honestly, Edge going to John Cena's home and beating up his dad just added that extra level of entertainment. All the out-of-ring promo work and antics that they got up to made it that much more entertaining. Obviously, that being back in the mid-2000s, maybe I was a little bit too young to fully appreciate it. But one that I wasn't too young to fully appreciate, and I think has the distinction of probably being one of his worst outcomes, is the Nexus feud. Still to this day, I think the Nexus was and is one of the best factions to ever grace the WWE. They obviously fumbled that ending a little bit, but I still think it ranks as one of his best feuds because of how entertaining it was. And it got guys like Wade Barrett, guys like Daniel Bryan, the one-man band, Heath Slater out of that as well.
It's definitely one of his most infamous feuds for sure. I don't know. I'm a little weird on the Nexus because, I ultimately agree that Cena probably shouldn't have buried them the way he did at SummerSlam. But at the same time, too, I look at a lot of the guys in that faction. I'm like, Wade Barrett should have been a future star, and in most other eras, he would have been. Daniel Bryan obviously became one, but actually in that SummerSlam match, he was on Cena's team. Like, he had left the Nexus by that point. And then I look at the rest of the people on that roster, and I'm like, yeah, the rest of these guys were just jobbers, like, straight up. Yeah. Heath Slater is probably the most infamous of them. I believe early form Bray Wyatt was on there. Husky Harris still at the time, but he needed to be completely repackaged before he could actually turn into something special. I agree. It's one of his most well-known moments. Certainly one of his most infamous moments. I just hear that he buried them a lot of the time. And I'm like, I don't know if he really did bury them or if the Nexus just wasn't a long-term thing. Like, most of those guys weren't long-term stars, really. Like, are we really expecting David Otunga to be anything more than what he ended up being in WWE? No disrespect, David Otunga. No disrespect. But, like, compare him to the other wrestlers of that era, I think there's a reason Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan were really the only two from the original Nexus that ever got over. Ultimately, I agree with you, right? That is a very well-known part of his career. I just don't necessarily agree with the whole, like, burial thing, I guess. I don't think he really buried them. I think they were buried by being put in that position in the first place.
Yeah. Well, and, like, even a guy like Ryback, did you really expect him to get over any more than he already did? Or even a Justin Gabriel, obviously a very entertaining high flyer at the time, but obviously who it hurt the most was a Wade Barrett.
Yeah.
But I still, to this day, probably label it one of the most entertaining feuds. And
100%.
My third one, and you're probably going to disagree with me on this one as well, but The Miz. I really liked his feud with John Cena and his status as one of his greatest rivals. He obviously got pushed to the side a little bit up to, like, WrestleMania 27, a little bit after with The Rock. But I just think the mic work, the storyline telling, and everything about that feud was just entertaining to me.
That one of my favorite moments from that era of wrestling, and it's one of my favorites because I think it's hilarious, was that era where The Miz and R-Truth were just attacking everybody on the roster to the point that the roster was willing to walk out on Triple H and be like, this is an unsafe work environment. I was like, these guys are both jobbers 2 years later. What do you mean? Like, I agree with you. I think The Miz is one of his most iconic opponents. I just love that era specifically. And it also gave us, The Rock's return match after whatever it was, 6 years or something like that, in that tag match with The Miz and R-Truth, ultimately building to the once in a lifetime at WrestleMania 28. Yeah. So, I completely agree. I think The Miz is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the world and definitely very iconic John Cena opponent.
It's funny because I remember The Miz talking about it in one of the interviews. He's the only one that doesn't remember him headlining WrestleMania because in that match, he actually hit the back of his head on the concrete. And that's the only injury he's ever suffered. And obviously not John's fault, obviously not really his fault either. But I think that speaks just miles about both of those guys. Very underrated in-ring work. The fact that both of them have been in the WWE for so long and have been very safe.
Yeah, for sure.
but absolutely one of the top end feuds for me.
One more I gotta bring up too because it hasn't been brought up yet. You can't talk about John Cena without his feud with CM Punk, I don't think.
Yeah,
Probably his most critically acclaimed feud overall. Like, those are probably the best matches of his career. I would also throw AJ Styles in there as well as kind of a late stage greatest opponent for him. Nearly, when it was happening, a dream match at the time and a dream matchup, but obviously they showed out. And that was part of the time too when John was helping guys get over. So like Styles beat him clean in an era where a lot of people didn't do that, right? Those are two more that I would like to throw out there as well.
yeah, absolutely. And then once again, we mentioned him earlier. Shout out R-Truth. John was able to get another level out of that guy during his very brief run in the main event feud.
Yeah.
During, I want to say, Capital Punishment, when he had the little Jimmy Invisible Insane gimmick going on.
I believe so, yes. I that's a little bit before my time.
Don't we? Speaking of time, why don't we move on to Saturday night's main event? Obviously, mixed feelings about the pay per view, mixed emotions as to the outcomes. What do you think about it, Chris?
I loved it. I thought it was a great show overall. The only match that disappointed me was the opening match, Obafemi versus Cody Rhodes. I thought it was a great match, don't get me wrong. I thought, Femi throwing Rhodes around, he looked like an absolute beast the entire match. And like that dude, that his entrance is so good. It's so well made for the main roster as well. He feels like a big deal the moment the lights go out and his music picks up. Might be Def Rebel's best song that they've made for a superstar's entrance. Like it was in just outstanding presentation. That match definitely made Owa look like a beast. And then they just ruin it because they had to have Drew McIntyre interfere because God forbid somebody take a clean pinfall loss in WWE, right? It's just so frustrating. We called it. We knew it was going to happen and they
Yeah.
still did it. It was so predictable. Like, just, I would rather Cody had just beaten Owa clean. I would honestly have rathered that than just the false finish or the fake finish. I will say the one good thing that came out of it was the stare down between Obafemi and Drew McIntyre. Now I really want to see that match because that was a pretty sick stare down.
And that kind of raises another question: is do you think the Drew McIntyre Cody Rhodes feud is going on a little bit too long?
It all depends on how they end the feud. To me, if this ends and it's dragged on this long and it ends with Drew finally winning the title, then I think it works. I think the feud's been entertaining. There hasn't been a segment for it yet that I haven't found entertaining besides, some of the false finishes. If this feud, because it's drug on so long, ends with Drew finally taking the title off Cody, then I think it was the right amount of length to really build up the feud and build up that hatred between them and everything. If not, if this is just a holdover 3-month feud where Cody beats Drew every single time, then what are we doing here, right? There's so many more entertaining things you could do. Roll them through a bunch of like 1-month challengers, let them have some actual fun with this. Instead, they're building up this long-term feud that is just going to end with nothing have changed, basically. And time will tell, I think, whether or not this feud has gone too long. Right now, it's not looking great. Is the way I would look at it.
And that's kind of where I'm coming in, because I think it's going to be one of those feuds that Cody ends up winning, obviously. All said and done, seems a little bit pointless. And it does Drew McIntyre no favors either. He does fall here again, because then he just looks like that placeholder for future champions as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think overall Drew's station on the card won't change or anything like that. It's just, why book him at this absolute beast? Book him as a legit threat to the title for 3 matches straight and then just have him lose, Like, have him lose once, be frustrated or whatever, do a rubber match if you want, move the title and the storyline along, get Cody some new challengers. Like it's just, I would rather see a new challenger every month for that title than see the same guy for 3 months straight if there's not going to be a title change.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of beasts and guys that should be at the top of the card, Obafemi, he did his part. He had a very good match. And I think one thing that really stood out to me, at least, was the previous SmackDown where Obafemi and Cody Rhodes had a promo battle. Because obviously, as you know, Cody Rhodes is one of the guys that kind of has that presence and has that dominance in those mic situations. And Obafemi held his own. He was just as dominant as Rhodes was in that battle. So I think that really bodes well for him in the future.
Yeah, I would to go a step further and say not only did he hold his own, he was better, I think, than Rhodes in that segment, right? Oba is the complete package, 100%. You know, we saw the in-ring work. We've seen it for a long time. He's got the look, he's got the presence, he's got the aura, as the kids would say, but he tops it all off with being one of the best mic workers to come out of NXT. Like, he is the complete package in every way, and I just can't wait to see more of him on the main roster. I can't wait to see what they do with him on the main roster. I think we all know the path forward for Obafemi right now is going through NXT Stand and Deliver, likely dropping the title to Jevon Evans, and then he'll be called up after the fact. I'm sure he'll be in the Royal Rumble as well. A couple other, small appearances of him like that, but he will officially be up right after WrestleMania, and he's one of those guys that you gotta push to the moon right away.
No, I 100% agree. And speaking of Jevon Evans, him and Slater also had a match on this card, and
Yeah.
another classic show what the young kids can do type moment.
Yeah, a great match, and I mean, it's hard to not have a great match when you got the level of talent that's in that ring right now. Jevon Evans is, a future star in a lot of ways, and realistically, he should be a right now star. The fact that he's not NXT champion yet is kind of insane to me. I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, that just shows the talent of a guy like Obafemi that has just kind of held Jevon back, I guess, in a way, just because, Oba's that talented. But Jevon is going to carry that brand for another year after the fact when he wins the title. And, he should be on the main roster sooner rather than later. I don't care that he's 21 years old. He is good enough to be on the main roster right now. And this match showed it. Leon Slater as well looked great in this match. And he's one of those guys that I think everybody just knows as soon as his contract's up, he's coming to WWE at this point, and will be very good for that. And then on the other side, you got Dragon Lee and AJ Styles, Team AJ Lee, if you will. Just a weird pairing for a team, absolutely, but it's been so entertaining as well. And they're putting on great matches. They're bringing some prestige back to the Raw tag titles because they haven't mattered in like 3 years. It's pretty cool to see. So, yeah, I love this match. I thought it was a great match, a great showing for the kids, and very interested to see where the story goes from here.
And kind of jumping back even to SmackDown, they had a prep match with Jevon Evans against The Miz, as we mentioned him earlier. And yeah, he is an exciting wrestler, and I think he is probably a year or two out from being a main roster star. Now, that being said, I do think they need to kind of lessen the amount that they mention how old he is, because, Chris, if I would have taken a shot every time they mentioned he was 21 years old, I probably would have had alcohol poisoning.
That is a general problem with WWE's thing. They take one thing about the guy and just beat it into the ground on commentary, and it goes back to WWE's whole style of just very simplistic storytelling. Javon's thing is that he's young right now, and I agree, it's very frustrating. Like, let's let the in-ring work do some work for these characters as well and build their stories, not just have commentary hammer away at how young he is. Because at some point you watch what he does and you're like, yeah, we get it, he's young, but like, look at this guy wrestle. Who cares that he's 21 years old
Yeah,
at this point?
absolutely. And I think just the testament that they had him up against a Miz and a Team AJ Lee is a very good testament to where they think he's at in the company, right?
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't be having him face those three top end or safe workers if he wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's absolutely been presented as a future star. The only thing I would say is I don't know if he should be a future star or he should be a right now star. Like, he's good enough. He could easily be carrying the main roster.
And we kind of talked about this with the whole they dumb it down to one characteristic. I do think his whole "oh, I'm Gen Z" type character might need a little bit more transition power when it comes to the main roster.
I've just accepted that it's not really for me. I will say. I mean, I get it. I am Gen Z technically, but
Yeah,
like, I've accepted that this character is made more for the kids than anything like that. I won't say his character work is bad because it has been very good. He plays the underdog really well, which is another thing that really bodes well for him. But he's such a good performer that he still makes it work, even if even if the concept of his character is something that shouldn't resonate with me, it still works, I think, and
yeah,
that's just a testament to him as a performer.
absolutely. And we've talked a lot about Javon Evans, but even his partner Leon Slater, X Division TNA champion, I think he's NXT ready as soon as next month. If it wasn't for his contract.
when it's up, everybody knows he's going to NXT.
Speaking of NXT right now, how would you feel about the next match? Soul Ruca versus Bailey.
I thought it was a great match. Again, a great showing, and there's no better person on the main roster, I think, to come in and really help showcase an NXT talent. There's nobody better on the main roster than Bailey, like a seasoned veteran, one of the most solid in-ring workers over the last 10 years. There's an argument that she's just straight up the best in-ring worker out of anybody in the Four Horsewomen. And I mean, there's a debate there for sure, but I think a lot of people would agree with that. Bailey's best part of her work has always been her in-ring work, right? And so nobody better to come in and pair with the athletic freak that is Sol Ruca and really help her showcase her ability. And I got to say, I love the ending to this match. Soul Snatch into, the roll up pin by Bailey into the reverse roll up. So it like kind of plays with your emotions a little bit and kind of makes you think, oh, we're getting a Bailey win here. Oh no, we are getting a Soul win. Like it was a really well done finish and it was just executed so smoothly.
We actually called this last week because Bailey is one of the few wrestlers that WWE believes can take a clean loss. And what did she do? Took a clean loss.
It also helps further her character work right now, where she's kind of been a little crazy, split personalities, and it's all born of this frustration she's been having, whether it's with younger and newer wrestlers like Lyra Valkyria, where there's been some frustration there between the two of them, or just the fact that she feels that the company and time is passing her by. This has all been part of the story they've been building with her long term, so this helps further that as well.
I'm very interested to see where that character goes. Now, one thing I want to say about this match too is I've been reading a lot of online comments and a lot of backlash from some fans who don't believe Sol Ruca was the right choice to represent the NXT women's division. What do you think about that?
I disagree. I think it's been shown well enough on NXT. And don't get me wrong, I would have loved to see Mariah May in this spot. And I think Mariah May is probably the straight up best talent in the NXT women's division right now. And Jordan Grace would have been a great shout too. But as far as showcasing just the most exciting in-ring talent in NXT right now, it's hard to not go with Sol Ruca. A lot of what I said about Jevon Evans, you could very much say about Sol Ruca. For how young she is and how late she was starting wrestling, she is just an outstanding talent. She does things in the ring that you never see before. And so for me, it really works. It works as a showcase match. And I don't think there was a better option, in my opinion.
No, and this might not make for very good podcast content, but I agree 100%. I think they made the right choice with Sol Ruca. I just wanted to play a little bit of devil's advocate there. I think this match, out of all of them, and the Oba Fini match, will actually spur probably an increased rating for NXT. Like, I would be interested to see how many more people tune into NXT this week than last week.
I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping there gets to be more interest in NXT because that only helps these guys when they come up to the main roster and, the more casual audience now knows who they are, right? So yeah, I really hope more people are tuning into NXT.
Yeah, and then when either Sol Ruca or JC Jane or whoever it is comes up and challenges like a Jade, it's not, oh, well, we need to build her up from nothing.
Yep, exactly. Something that would have really helped, a Julia, for example, to have a pre-existing relationship with the crowd. Because, again, she's struggling to connect right now, but if anybody had seen her work in NXT, I think they would have known a lot more about her and preferred her. I still think Julia will be fine. She's too much of a talent to not, but I do think getting more people watching NXT is the best thing for a lot of these guys that are going to be coming up.
And speaking of NXT, another guy that was featured from NXT, but the whole Miz segment with Joe Hendry. I've seen a lot of backlash, especially against just the placement of where that was on the card. And I can see where they're coming from. I think it would have been better as an opener. Like an opener, get the crowd going, get the vibes going, right?
I'm going to be honest. I did not see this segment because I watched Saturday night's main event after the fact on a replay. And so I was kind of skipping through to catch the matches. And I must have missed this segment. When was it placed on the card?
Right before the John Cena event.
Right. I mean, isn't that kind of wrestling 101 though? Like you book kind of a cool down segment in between matches to kind of give the crowd, another opportunity to just regain their energy for what is going to be a very emotionally charged match.
Because everyone will so highly anticipating John come out next. And then you see The Miz, you see Joe Hendry interfere, all that kind of threw the crowd off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, very good comedy work between both wrestlers.
I was going to say, there's no better straight man in comedy segments than The Miz in WWE, really. So, and I mean, if that is the initial feud Joe Hendry has when he gets to the main roster, that would work out pretty well, I think.
There almost seems to be a trend between NXT talents coming up, having some interactions with The Miz, and then moving on, right? Like,
Yep.
even going all the way back, like 10 years, you talked about the Nexus earlier, Daniel Bryan and his mentor, The Miz, right? This next generation's Carmelo Hayes coming up, being mentored by The Miz, and then moving on. And now it seems like we're on the trend where Joe Hendry might come up, feud with The Miz, and then move on. And part of me thinks that it's because, honestly, he's just such a safe worker with such good mic skills that it kind of introduces these talents to everything that they'll need to be successful at the WWE level.
He's got the skill set. He can get the feud over right away. And, because he's so easy to hate, he's such a good heel, it helps get his opponents over right away as well. So yeah, he's the safest option a lot of the time. It's one of those things, though, I do wish they change it up a little bit, because it gets to be a little old when every new wrestler coming up is feuding with The Miz right away. You know what I mean? It wouldn't shock me if Obafemi's first opponent on the main roster is him killing The Miz. You know what I mean? I get why they use him, but like let's find some other people. Like, I'm sure Austin Theory would work in that role too. I know people kind of see him as still an up and comer, but he would work just as well in that role. Grayson Waller would work well in that role. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's not be too predictable. How about?
Also, at this point, I don't even know if The Miz has a win all year because he's been playing that role so much.
Well, that's nothing new though. The Miz has went years without a win, so that's nothing new.
Yeah. Speaking of not having a win, John Cena's very last match ever. Obviously, outcome tapping out to Gunther had a lot of people upset. I think they did him right there.
I think it was the perfect ending. I think a lot of people that are upset are just getting worked. Like, seriously, the whole point is you're supposed to be upset that Cena gave up and tapped out to Gunther because Gunther's a heel and they're getting him over as a heel. Like, it makes so much sense to me. I loved the visual right at the end of Cena being locked in, realizing he's beat, just smiling and going, okay, my career is over, and then tapping out. I loved that visual, and it went over so many people's heads, and, it's partially WWE's fault because they're so used to dumbing down storylines that I think a lot of people missed it, but it was so well done, in my opinion. I thought it was a great match of the night. Gunther showed out. He made Cena look like an absolute beast on the way out, and then, put him down. And it was the perfect way to do a retirement match, in my opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, especially when it comes to professional wrestling, the common courtesy is you always lose your last match. You almost always do. And a lot of my friends, especially the more casual WWE fans, were very upset John Cena lost. But really, how would he not lose? And what would he even gain from a win, right? We don't want another Nexus situation.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't think Gunther would be buried with a loss by any means, but the whole story they're telling with him is he's come back as this absolute killer at the end, like after being gone for a couple of months, right? It's hard to come back being put up as this absolute killer and then losing a match to a guy that's 48 years old and on his way out, and a guy who just lost to Dominic Mysterio. Gunther shouldn't be losing to Cena. Realistically, the only thing, and this is what worries me with the booking, is WWE has a tendency to, not rush these things. They're very slow to really push guys. And so, Gunther has retired Goldberg and he's retired Cena this year. The next logical step is him winning the Royal Rumble and taking the WWE title. Or the alternative is maybe a feud with Lesnar where he beats Lesnar. Those are the two options. It was the right result. It's just now they need to execute on what they've done. I think he needs to take the top title in the next year, realistically. I just think Royal Rumble WrestleMania is the most common way to do it, especially for a guy who's taking that next step. But it can be any number of ways. If they have him win King of the Ring and have him go after Cody after that, he's done it once already. It kind of mirrors how he won the World Heavyweight title. You can do it that way as well. It doesn't really matter how he does it, in my opinion, just so long that in the next year, they capitalize on this momentum and put that top title on him.
I think it makes it a little bit more challenging because Gunther's primarily on Raw. And right now, who runs Raw? The Vision.
But I mean, it'd be nothing for Gunther to move to SmackDown.
Yeah.
We're in that time of the season where, guys are going to get moved around a little bit.
Yeah, and I think he would fit better on that SmackDown. They need a number one heel on SmackDown. Who could that be? Gunther.
Oh, 100%. And also, if he's on SmackDown, that gets him on the same show as Ilya Dragunov, who is just straight up his best rival in anything ever. And, that just means that there's more chances for them to maybe eventually face off on the main roster. So, yeah, I think the move to SmackDown makes sense, especially if he's going to go after the WWE title, which he absolutely should.
Yeah.
My guess, honestly, what's going to happen, I think, booking wise, and here's another prediction that I'm sure I'm going to get right. He walks into the Royal Rumble going after Cody's title. He's going to have like a segment before the Royal Rumble where he stands in the ring opposite Cody and calls him out and about how he's better than him and all like the whole Gunther promo. And then they're going to go into the Royal Rumble, and either Brock is going to take Gunther out of the Royal Rumble, or what I think will happen is Gunther knocks Brock out, Brock gets pissy, comes back into the ring, and grabs him and throws him out, and then we have a feud for WrestleMania. I honestly think that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, and we've kind of been predicting that for the last couple of weeks here. No matter how you cut it, they have to push him to the moon and back now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they risk losing the relevance and the importance of him retiring both Goldberg and Cena.
Yeah, definitely. And another reason too, I think this will work out this way is because I think what happens for Cody going forward, I honestly think the Mania match for him is going to be a Randy Orton.
I could see that, especially since he's scheduled to come back pretty soon here.
Yeah.
And just obviously the legacy of Randy Orton. See what I did there?
Yep.
And just his overall status and position on the card, that's never going to change. So I think that would be the best way to just get him reintegrated into the roster and up to the status quo, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be sad not seeing John anymore.
Definitely. And I mean, he's going to come back. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he'll come out and do a segment every once in a while, cut a promo or something like that. But yeah, it's going to be weird knowing that was John Cena's last match ever until Saudi Arabia throws millions at him. And then, 5 years from now, we'll see some washed up John Cena in a tag team match or something. And it's just going to be heartbreaking. But, we can hope it doesn't happen.
It's funny that you say that because I've had this conversation with so many of my WWE friends. I genuinely think when John Cena says it's his last match, it's going to be his last match. It's not going to be a Shawn Michaels, I'll come out for one more match and completely disappoint in Saudi Arabia. I think John's going to be a man of his word because he wants to end his legacy high. He's a man of very high morals, right? Very good person. If he says something, he's going to stick to it. And he's a man of his word.
I agree. I think he believes that. But this is wrestling and money talks. So like I said, I could very well see it. I think Shawn Michaels believed he would never wrestle another match either. But the money really does talk sometimes.
I also think John Cena's at a different stage than Shawn Michaels because John is now going to go on and be a very good movie star. Would he be in a position where he would need that? And I don't think he would be.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm just being cynical about it a little bit and end on a bit of a higher note. Like, he's 100% the Hall of Fame inductee this year, right? Yeah. I believe they haven't said who any of the inductees are. Cena will 100% be the guy this year. That's going to be exciting as well, and there'll be more tiers there, I'm sure.
With that being said, Chris, I do think he's one of the best to ever do it. And John Cena is probably one of the biggest crossover stars that WWE will ever have, especially when it comes to just mainstream popularity. And unfortunately, we're not going to see him anymore.
Yeah. I like how you did that.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, that's all of our mic work this week. So make sure you tune in next week. So yeah.
Don't miss any spots.
Thank you so much. We'll talk at you next week, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great week.